Yeah. Hey.
Hey, good morning and welcome to Over 50 Starting Over. It is Friday, January 14th, 2022, and I'm still Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
How are you today, Merle?
Funny.
I see a few boxes and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
discombobulation going on behind
Yeah, I
you.
really do. Fortunately, I know
Barren
where
shelves.
a few things are, but yeah, with this thing is happening, man. The studio is starting to come down high atop Woodland Hills, California, and getting ready for the move to Arizona.
Do you have your office already planned out? Laid out in your
Yeah,
head?
I know where it's gonna be in the
Okay.
house, and we're gonna see it's how the architecture works out on this whole thing, but I'm gonna try to keep the same kind of look, but we'll see how it works
Yeah.
out. Best laid plans on that whole thing, but I'm
Yeah.
excited about it. It is since we're in Arizona, most of those houses out there are ranch style houses, which is the
That's
type of house that I'm moving into. So
nice.
It's going to be a little bit of a different look and feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, looking forward to that. But in the meantime, lots of boxing up stuff and just
Horrible.
well, it's hard, and I think it's a lot easier to unbox things than it is to box things. And
It is.
it's like putting together a puzzle with every box, and also, I don't want things to break either. So it's like, does it go this way? Does it go that
I
way?
think the worst part is that you got endless minor. I don't want to say minor, but endless decisions to make while you're boxing.
That's right.
Can I keep this? Should I keep this?
Yes.
Can I? And then the tug at the heart continuously about throwing all these little things out. No, unboxing is a piece of cake in comparison.
Oh my gosh. Well, and you're right too. There's so many things that I've come across that I haven't seen in so long. And it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. Here's one of them right here. This is a bulletin that came out from Ohio Bell when my dad worked there. This was him. This is my dad here shaking hands with the vice president of the Communication Workers of America back in 1992. They just finished a long and laborious contract negotiation for the communication workers of Ohio Bell. My dad was the vice president of personnel there, so he was in charge of this. This was highly publicized. It was on television. It was on the news all summer long. This is on September 23rd, 1992. And this was the second big negotiation that he had in the last 3 years. He'd had one in 89 as well. And I'm telling you, this was a big deal for him. This is him at the pinnacle of his career right here. Now, he announced his retirement right after this. It might have been the day after this. He was going into retirement. He was 55 years old. He gave me a call to let me know about this. I was awfully proud of him. He was looking at starting a new business and asked me if I would want to be a part of that. Of course, I said yes. About 2.5 weeks later, he had a heart attack and he died. But I look at this picture here of him. I'm the exact same age as him right there.
Yeah, I know.
Crazy stuff.
It's so unfair. It's so unfair.
It is unfair. But at the same time, Barry, we talked about this last week, and we talked about regrets. And, my father was very competitive. He was very ambitious. He was, but this job really took a toll on him. And you could see as he went through these contract negotiations that it was like a new battery that you put into anything, and then into a flashlight, and you got a real bright light. But after you go through a weekend of camping, at the end, it's all dim. That's how he seemed at the end of these things. And, I think if he had a chance to do it all over again, he would have chosen maybe to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And maybe he would have left. Maybe he would have retired sooner than that. I'm not really sure.
But seriously, Merle, to retire at 55 is to retire extremely young.
Yeah,
you wouldn't. I mean, knowing what you know now, of course. Oh yeah, I would have retired at 45. Of course, if you knew that you were going to die at 55, of course. But dude, seriously, for him to even consider retiring at 55, I think is like, I when you mentioned that, I was like, wow, that was kind of a gutsy move in and of itself.
It was. Yeah. However, I would say this, that if you are in a situation where all your time is taken up at work and you have no energy left when you come home to your family, and you feel that you see that your health is declining as a matter of that, there's nothing more precious than that. I hear what you're saying as well. And these aren't easy things. You just can't make those kinds of decisions off the cuff. You've really got to think about it. But as I look at my father's life and I think about what he had gone through, of course, it's easier for me to look back and say, hey, I would have done things differently. Mm-hmm. But I certainly have lived my life differently as a result of looking at him, mm-hmm. and knowing that my health and my well-being, my peace of mind, my family, sometimes has to trump what I'm doing as a career. Mm-hmm. And maybe I need to make changes. And I say retire, that doesn't mean that you stop working. That just means he's retiring from that position and looking for something else, looking for something that maybe gives him a better quality of life.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. Very interesting. I have some interesting thing that's gone on with me this week. But also, Lisa talks about this all the time, about her father dying just as yours did, just as mine did, before they enjoyed retirement, and the amount of stress that she endures. It's her job is very consuming, and should she retire from that and do something that is more less stressful for her, that she enjoys? That's something that her and I discuss all the time. Myself, I always preach about doing what you enjoy. And I've had the good fortune of being able to go through college, pursuing what I'm best at and what I enjoy, and having made a lifetime career out of that. I feel very, very blessed about it.
You are.
And doubling down on that, Merle, I've mentioned this to some extent in the recent past, that I've been putting out feelers for remote work, different, whether it's contract work or whatever, in different regards, where I've just always thought about it, because being a business owner on my own for the last 30 years, there's a lot that I do every day that I hate, that the bureaucracy that comes with it, the business development that comes with it, and paperwork and different things like that. What do I love? I love two things equally, and that's the content marketing that promotes a business, increases its SEO, and in turn, it's part of a lead generation program. Mm-hmm, and it's building the business in that regard via online marketing. The other thing that I love is the graphic design, the branding of things via visual graphic design. And so I've been pursuing senior graphic design positions and content marketing positions too. And I just had my first corporate interview in 30 years yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you feel?
Oh, I was very well prepared. And that's actually something that I wanted to talk a little bit about to benefit our audience. Lisa had me so overly prepared, but I'm very well prepared for future subsequent interviews with this company. Right. So this was with the initial recruiter, and it was a canned interview that a lot of ambiguous questions, like, how do you handle ambiguity? That was the question. I was like, wow, that spans quite a bit. But I ended up saying that I view it from putting myself in the position of my career. I would say ambiguity to me means when I don't get the results that I'm looking for from programmers that I am bringing on in my team or another team member, then I know that it's because I didn't communicate the goals well enough. I was ambiguous. So that's all I can control. And so I need to tighten up those things. If it's me not knowing what is expected of me from a client or something, then I have to ask more questions. And if I'm not getting answers, if it's still ambiguous, then I have to define it for myself, and we'll see how we go from there. I've been in all of these circumstances, so I'm not blowing smoke.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions like that. But anyways, so I'm feeling out this company as they're feeling out me, because I'm not going to take anything that I am pursuing another upper level of doing what I want to do in my third act. I want to do exactly. I'd be freaking so happy to get out of bed in the morning because I love what I do.
Yeah.
And boy, it got better and better as the interview went on.
Really?
She's talking about the culture there, how amazing it is. She came from a toxic company and came here. And this is a company I don't want to give too much away. I want to leave it private. But they are very much about sustainability, and a close second is their employees. They're a 13,000 employee global company that considers themselves 13,000 entrepreneurs. And that's why they asked me for an interview, is because I'm an entrepreneur.
Right.
Then she went on to say, if you're asked to do some stuff a little outside the scope of what would be your job description, I'm like, whoa, I'm all about that. I said, because the one thing I can't do is, if I'm going to do content marketing, I can't just leave behind the senior graphic design level of branding that I do. They're intertwined. They overlap so much and they get you to the same place. I love both equally. Boy, she loved that. And I could tell the company loves that. So, and then at the very end, I never said anything. I never asked. The company is based in Solon. I couldn't see myself driving out to Solon every day. Wouldn't do it. The last thing at the very end, without any problems, she's like, and she asked me about being a self-starter. I'm like, 30-year business owner on my own. Yes, I'm a self-starter. I mean, to say the least. And at the end, she goes, well, okay, want you to know this is, for the most part, a remote position. And, but you could come in on occasions for this, that, and the other. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. Everything about this, I'm really jazzed. So we'll see where this goes. But I got some other irons in the fire that it's competing against too. And I'd say I'll just blurt out one because I haven't gotten a call back. I barely started working on them, but the Cleveland Orchestra. There's something really right up my alley that I'm excited about that I want to check out. But yeah, you're going to say something. I wanted to talk more about the questions I prepared for.
Well, I was going to say that question about being asked to do something outside of your specific area of expertise. Isn't that really the DNA of an entrepreneur anyhow?
That's why they asked. And I elaborated on everything with her. Like, I had a great phone call with her. It was very relaxed. It was really, I told her about the whole difference between, we've talked about it on the show. There's so much about what we've talked about on the show that filtered into the interview.
Isn't that interesting?
Things that I've learned from you that you've talked about on the show. But so she was talking about being asked what to do and stuff like that. And I said, there are different kinds of teams. I don't want to be on a team where somebody cites their job description and that this is not in my job description when you're trying to reach a common goal. And I talked about toxic teams and how that would just permeate from the top, and it creates anxiety throughout a marketplace leading from fear. And she goes, you hit on that. I came from a company like that. And I said, see, and you know what happens if you stay there long enough, it'll wear on you. It'll wear you down. And then you start thinking that that's all you're worth. And she's like, you're exactly right. She goes, I've been here 5 months and it's night and day. And she sold me on this. But I get it, man. I've seen it all. It all. And, but I just had the best feeling about it. I'm really excited. So we'll see where it goes.
Question for you, Barry. Why make a move like that into a corporate environment after My gosh, what, 30 years of doing this on your own?
Excellent question, because I'm on my third act and I'm asking myself, what do I really want to do? And what I really want to do is focus on the stuff I enjoy most. And as I said earlier, as a business owner, and it just, God only knows, we could be talking about this a few months from now, and I'm going to be going, you know what? I've picked up some great new clients. I'm liking what I'm doing. I'm going to put that other thought on hold for a while. Maybe that'll happen. I don't know. But where I'm at right now is, like I said, I just think about what do I like most? And it's the content marketing and the branding design that go together to build businesses. I just freaking love that. So if I could get out of bed in the morning and know simply that these kinds of projects that I have to work on, where I'm at as a business owner, it's just a cluster in your head of all these different little freaking things I got to get out of the way in order to work on a couple of projects that get me in the right direction. It's really very difficult, to be perfectly honest. So, like I said, it's the third act. I want to do and so, just to put this up against what we were talking about with your dad retiring at 55, I'm more excited than ever about taking a leap forward, in my opinion, with what I want to do. Because like your father wanted to leave corporate America in order to do something that he wanted to do more, a passion. Lisa's kind of in that same boat. I'm going in reverse, that I've already done all that. And now I want to be able to hyper focus more on what I want to do for my third act and create and I see this as a year-long contract, and I'm going to blow them out of the water. And it's how I'm seeing it though. I see it as 1 year contract. Right. At the end of that year, it's going to be like, holy crap. Now I got that on my resume, as I may possibly be looking to use that for my next contract.
Gotcha.
At a super high level,
I can see the excitement that you have about this. And, there's something to be said about following your heart too. When your heart is into something like this, there's inspiration there. There's a knowingness, a path that you appear to be on here. So very excited,
I'm really happy.
Barry.
I got more news too, but I just wanted to mention, and I want you to chime in on this, because I'm surprised you never went over this, because of your experience with going from different career moves. But I think it's because it's second nature to you that you overlook it. So what I'm talking about is being prepared with different hard questions, which is what Lisa did with me, because she's very adept at this. Questions like, first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself. Dude, if you're not prepared for that little story, you're going to be fumbling your way through that. And that there's nothing attractive about fumbling your way through that. So be prepared with
that. That's your elevator pitch. You know what I'm saying?
Is right.
That's the thing that you can either keep very short, like on an elevator ride, or you can expand on. But that's the thing. You're right. You've got to have that down pat. If you don't have that, you're just womp womp, you're out of there.
Oh yeah, it's just uncomfortable. And when you're uncomfortable, you make the other person uncomfortable. Everybody's uncomfortable. Bad interview. Yeah. So be prepared. In my case, I would get the question for sure, why do you now want to go back to corporate? So I'm not going to bother with my answers. In my opinion, they're a little personal anyway. Just going to go through some very important questions. Here's a big question: stress and pressure. Describe a stressful work situation and how I handled it. So think about those for yourself.
That is a common one.
All of these that are coming up, when you think about it from your own personal perspective, it will make you very uncomfortable to answer that when you're not prepared. All right. Next one, challenge / goal success. Example of a goal I attained and how I attained it. And on the opposite end, example of a goal I didn't hit and how I handled it. That's the hard one. When you want to admit your failure to someone and how you handled it. Mistakes. Have you ever made a mistake? How did you handle it? I make mistakes on a daily basis, but then you got to do some proper self-introspection. Unpopular decision. What's a very unpopular decision you made, within your team or whatever, and how did you handle it? Disagreements. You ever disagree with the supervisor? Ever disagree with a client? How did you handle those things? Prioritization and deadlines. How do you handle those? And teamwork and motivation. And I left that kind of vague, but I was prepared with that one. And I did end up using a lot of that in my conversation yesterday. Most of this stuff I didn't even need for my conversation yesterday, because I guess it was pretty preliminary with the recruiter. But I still will, assuming she was talking like I'm going to be talking with the hiring manager next, like probably next week. She was talking.
At the same time, being prepared with those very difficult questions. A lot of those are, they're thought provoking, and you don't want to answer those off the cuff. You want to be prepared for those types of questions, and being prepared for that gives you confidence when you go into those situations. Even if they don't ask those questions, you know that you have those up your sleeve.
And you hit the nail on the head, because if you come into that with the confidence of knowing of that preparedness, then you can have a very heartfelt conversation, and it's comfortable, and they walk away from that feeling good about you because you were comfortable. They were comfortable.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you're nervous,
right.
They're nervous. Bad.
And there's something to be said for being prepared for those types of questions coming into the situation, but it's a two-way street as well. I mean, the interview, at least the way that I look at it, is that you're just as much interviewing them as they are interviewing you.
Absolutely.
And the thing is that you don't want to be working for a company that, oh, surprise, oh, here's another surprise that you weren't prepared for because you didn't ask the questions on the front end.
Right. No, very true. And I was getting more feedback about them than I ever thought I would, and got really excited, very pleasantly surprised. I got to tell you, that was a very good experience.
Some of those questions that you asked are questions that you can mirror back to them as well. Like, how do you handle ambiguity? What's the company culture regarding that? What are some of the things that you thought were the direction of the company, but you found out that these decisions actually didn't work out? Those are good questions to understand how they mitigate through problems, because depending on your style, you really want to know those things before you come into a situation. And then, just like on your own side, you make mistakes. Companies are made of people who make mistakes. And It's interesting to understand how they do this. A great attitude that you and I both have is we can learn from mistakes, but not every culture looks at it that way.
That's very interesting. That was really good advice. And I'm going to most certainly, assuming I get the next round of interview with the hiring manager, I'm going to take your advice, because like the question, as you brought up, like the question about ambiguity, that did leave a hint about the culture. Like they're basically saying, hey man, we could be pretty ambiguous here.
Right.
How do you handle that? So it's like, you're right. Turn that back on.
No, how do you handle that? No,
I'm going to. That's really good advice.
Yeah. And you want to be diplomatic about how you do it. Like, you wouldn't want to say it the way I just said it, but yeah,
well, you're right.
Diplomacy is
her
everything.
And I had a bit of a conversation about that, and that's where it led to teams. Like, if you have a team of solid people that aren't pass the buck and throw you under the bus type people, you got people that pick up the slack, that are like, I got your back. I want to impress you next time that we talk with my end of things, that kind of stuff. Like, you want to impress each other. You don't want to let your team down. You've used those exact words in the past. I don't want to let my team down. That's the kind of team I want to be on. And that's another thing, is I spend too much time alone. When I talk about working on teams, they're too few and far between. And I want to work with more teamwork at this point in my life, because it's motivating. It gets you out of bed in the morning. It's fun.
It really is. I was it's funny. I was going through a lot of my stuff, and I found this award that I had won back in high school, my senior year. We won the 3,200 meter relay, the 2-mile relay, and I was on that relay team. And I still have that award. and this was for the Suburban League Championship. But I just started to think back on how fun it was as compared to it's great winning the 800-meter relay. I that was a race that I ran many times, but winning that with three other guys,
Yeah,
there just being a part of that team.
That.
Yeah,
it's tripled. The whole effect is tripled.
Yeah, it's I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, and that was like what 40 years ago, but still, it seems like yesterday. And in business, it's the same thing. It's funny how sports and business can very much have similar experiences.
Oh, dude, that's so underestimated, especially today in the age of helicopter parenting and participation trophies, is how sports in high school will teach you adversity. It teaches
Absolutely.
it teaches you how the hard work pays off in the end. It teaches you how to win and lose.
You know, I just want to bring this up, and I'm not trying to veer off too far here, but something that I learned in football that has, again, just to your point, they used to drill this into our heads, was that you have to play in the moment. And if you are thinking about the last play, whether it was good or bad, but in particular, they were really focusing on bad. Say you got burnt by your opponent on the last play.
In football, in the NFL, they talk about that mostly with cornerbacks.
I was a cornerback.
Oh, I didn't know you were a cornerback.
And so what would happen if you got burnt on that last play? They scored a touchdown on you. The guy got behind you and made that spectacular catch.
They're going to come back after you.
Galloped into the end zone. Yeah, and now they know that your head is you're condemning yourself. You're beating yourself up. They're going to give you maybe a different look and come right at you again. This is a lesson in life. You have to play in the moment. You have to get rid of what happened a moment ago and play in the moment. And that is such a metaphor for life. Your enemy can beat you that way. Your enemy that's the strategy of any enemy, any opponent, any competition that you have. It's so funny. I in my career, so many times I've been in an industry. I've been in an industry where a lot of the same guys I compete against, and we all know each other, and it's kind of fun to the different competitions that we have. And sometimes I see the same looks, sometimes I see different looks. It's just like playing football. It's the same thing.
That is cool. No, it's so.
But in your personal life as well.
Yeah, it's so understated. The lessons that we can learn from sports to apply and during our formative years. That's the important part.
It is important. You're exactly right.
So I had another great success story this week that is still unfolding. Very exciting. And you're going to some extent recognize.
Oh, I was going to ask you about this.
Yeah. So Syndicate of Sounds had a minor unveiling 2 nights ago at this is the horizontal version and reversed out version of the logo that I did. And God, I can't tell you how thrilled they are. And I am as well. This is part of what I mean by I can't give up the design aspect, the visual design aspect of branding. I just can't. It's a passion. And
that's money right there. I'm telling you, the way that looks, very, very nice job. I didn't have I wanted to write something on Facebook about it, but I didn't have the right words in my head. But, you know, I can remember going into music studios and like in a record store or something where I'm outside, you hear it, but you go into that sound room and it's like quadraphonic sound all around it, and it envelops you. That logo causes me to feel that. That's what I feel when I see that your logo there. You did a great job on that.
Boy, if that is a great segue into the explanation of what took place on Wednesday night. I'm going to share this. So at the Music Box downtown on the west bank of the Flats, the Music Box is, how do I want to describe this? It's a nightclub. It's kind of like dinner theater, if you could see this, a dinner theater nightclubish atmosphere. And they specialize in doing very intimate audiences, and it'll be like mostly a baby boomer crowd. You can see this stage right here, and you see the tables right here.
Yep.
And they have a lot of different rooms with a lot of, and this is the room that I was in the other night. Unfortunately, this is too small. This one's bigger, but you just see this stage really. But this is a big box of a room, and it was built out to be particularly like this because it's about the best acoustical setting in Cleveland. And this is where we had our little event on Wednesday, which, as it turns out, was specifically for friends and partners of the Syndicate of Sounds. So it was an introduction to us just so we can experience the product and tell people and start getting the word out. The big unveiling, I didn't know this until Wednesday night. The big unveiling is February 4th, Friday, and I will be there for that as well. That's where the logo will be debuted. It will be to the public and all of this. So anyways, so I go into this place, see if I have another photo like that. Not that it matters. Yeah, here's one of the room again.
Oh,
that's the room we were in. And there's 6 speakers lining the ceiling up there, the black area of the ceiling, all around you. And okay, it was explained to us, surround sound as we know it. You put your headphones on, you hear stuff in the left, then you hear stuff in the right, and it sounds like the voice is coming down the middle. That's what we call surround sound that we've known thus far. So they started with a song by Steely Dan. Steely Dan has a lot of different instruments in the band, kind of soft jazzy rock. So good place to start. And they played it in the surround sound of their beautiful system, one of the best in Cleveland. And it's like, okay. And then he says, and now this is with our proprietary new sound system from Syndicate of Sounds. And oh my God, Merle, all 6 of those speakers were playing different instruments coming out.
Really interesting.
Yes, it was amazing. So then they did the same thing. He's like, okay, let's go with some super classic rock. Let's do the song Bad Company by Bad Company, and plays about the first 20 seconds in typical surround sound. Then plays the whole song in the Syndicate of Sound system. Holy crap. Now it's a simple song. It's like a 4-piece, your typical 4-piece band. You got your drums, your bass, and your guitar and a voice. And yet it was like, you heard a whole nother depth you never heard before.
So it was like the sound coming from like the vocals coming from one speaker, the guitar, the drum, everything is coming from different speakers. And
then when it needed to, it would fade into one to the other. Now, the third and final one. Whole lot of love by Led Zeppelin.
Oh boy.
No. Oh my God. I'm not kidding you. So they play the first 20 seconds or so in the surround, and then they play it in this new thing. And if you can get that song in your head, dude, I had tears in my eyes. That's one of my favorite songs by one of my favorite bands ever. And it was like I never heard it before.
That is really, really something.
It blew my socks off. So I can't wait for the further developments of this. And I'm just really honored to be on the ground floor of this. Now, I want to say next week, you're not going to be here. And our special guest host is going to be Mark Tennant, old friend and partner of mine. He's the one that brought me in. He's a partner on Syndicate of Sounds. He's the one that brought me in to do the branding, and we're going to really take an in-depth dive on this. Amongst
others. It's really cool that you are on the ground floor of this whole thing, and at the same time, the way technology is advancing regarding this type of entertainment is really something. You mentioned that you had tears in your eyes. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about my new television, and I had tears in my eyes watching one of these Marvel movies, and I couldn't
Guardians of the Galaxy.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing there, and it is really something. What's next? I mean, how do we
holograms.
The holodeck, exactly.
Yeah.
It's going to
Yeah.
be. I mean,
Dude,
we're speeding into that direction right now, and when you already have a lot of the elements of that ready to roll.
the further we get along, the more I believe we're already living in the holodeck.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack on that one,
Oh,
but
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So we did a kind of an extended version of our upfront part of the show. We can go in a lot of different directions. And I just wanted to ask where you wanted to go with this. Did you want, I don't, you know what? I just looked in my notes and I did not take down much as far as current events went. Read a whole lot of interesting stuff and listened to a whole lot of interesting podcasts throughout the week. I just didn't take notes, but I could talk about them.
Yeah, so I did send you the speech that Joe Biden gave on Tuesday, I think, of this week. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but it was all around this
I
new.
commented back on that, right? What did he
Oh,
say?
I
What was he
did not
talking?
see
Then
that.
maybe I missed it.
It had everything to do with the new with this Voting Rights Act that they're
Oh,
trying to pass in Congress right now. Did you happen to see that?
I guess I didn't. I
Hmm.
does not sound familiar. I think I totally missed it. I
Well,
mean, I know what you're talking about. It's a bunch of crap. I mean, if you just simply get everybody an ID, and if you have an ID, you vote. Simple. It's not. It's racist to say that there are people in this country that can't get an ID because they're too dumb or something.
you know, it is something when you think about this. The point is they're trying to make this seem like it's a racist thing to
Always,
require IDs at the voter
always.
booth, which is, I don't understand how you can say that when we need IDs for just about everything nowadays. Even to buy alcohol, you
Voting's
need
pretty damn
IDs.
important. If you
Yeah.
need an ID to buy alcohol, cigarettes, or board a plane, then why wouldn't you need an ID to vote for such an important thing in this country?
So do you, I mean, what do you, why would they not want IDs for voting then? Why would
Oh,
that,
that's
what would be
obvious.
the,
They need every lowest common denominator for a vote that they can possibly get. And the more ambiguity they can put into the system, the better off they'll be.
well, what we've seen here recently is a couple of big moves over the last week. Number one is in New York City, the new mayor that came in to replace de Blasio signed into law the ability for non-citizens to vote in the city elections. That's the first time this has ever happened in the country's history.
I don't even see how that should be constitutional. I know the Constitution is a framework, but so I guess I shouldn't put it in that regard, but I think it's a bastardization of the spirit of the Constitution. It
I
should
agree
be
with
an
that.
honor to vote, to tell you the truth.
Well, and why would we open that up to non-citizens when it's really the voting and citizenship go hand in hand?
That
But
seems obvious.
not to be outdone, Governor Newsom here in California presented a new bill to the legislature here that would give free health care to non-citizens
And
for
that
the
makes
whole
no sense
state of
whatsoever.
California, which is going to cost billions of dollars, which has
Taxpayers.
that really has the potential of destroying the entire state and putting the state into bankruptcy. And that has a domino effect on property values and business value as well here in California. So, but with the legislature here in California being about 95% Democrat, and there are reasons for that, not because that's representative of the state, but the way that the state politics are run, that's why it is the way it is. There's a good chance that this can happen. So now we go back to this voting act that we're looking at, and you wonder, well, why would we not want to require ID for the privilege to vote? And you can see here that if we're just going to give away things as a party, then and you don't require ID to vote, then anybody can vote, whether they're citizen or non-citizen. So the other thing that this act would cause to happen is the mail-in voting would be a norm for all 50 states. No state would be in charge or have any control over what would happen during the election process. Even districts, Senate districts, congressional districts would be at the control of the federal government. This gives complete control over the electoral process to the federal government. And this is all presented by Joe Biden earlier this week, because what they're saying is that our democracy is under a severe threat, and they bring that back to the whole thing that happened last January 6th, that this was an insurrection, that this was a coup.
They're beating that to death. I mean,
they really are.
They're hanging their last hat on that, and that's going to come up in, again, they're shooting themselves in the foot, because they've done test studies with common people. This I was just listening to on Crystal and Sagar this morning, maybe it was last night, but they were talking about testing like soccer moms, and they're like, so what do you think? And weeks after January 6th last year, and they're like, well, what do you think of January 6th? And long pause, and finally somebody says, what about January 6th? Not knowing, not putting it together. It means, are you paying attention, dude? Hello? You there? Okay. Yeah. Not putting it together at all. January 6th is not registering to them. And yet the Democrats have been trying to turn this into both 9/11 and Pearl Harbor ever since it happened.
You're right.
It's not registering with people.
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because during this speech, I watched it. I sent you a copy of it. You might want to check this out, because I could not believe what I was seeing. First off, it was a half an hour speech at a college down in Atlanta, and there's Joe Biden speaking. He had just visited the gravesite of Martin Luther King. You know, it's Martin Luther King Day coming up on Monday, and they wanted to have this vote on this Voter Rights Act on Monday in Congress. Obviously, because what they're equating this to is the right to vote, and that Black people have had their rights suppressed to vote. And that's really the big point that they're making. Number one is a coup has happened, that these powerful people are trying to take over America, and that Black people have had their voting rights suppressed. And I got to tell you, Barry, I that narrative, I don't see that whatsoever. I'm not seeing this at all.
Most people don't see
it. But during the speech, to really drive it home, Biden says this is the quote: do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? I mean, this is, if you don't agree with this Voting Rights Act, then you are Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederate government, or Bull Connor, who was in charge of public safety down in Alabama. He's the one that turned the hoses and the dogs on the Martin Luther King's protesters.
They're tone deaf. They just don't realize this is falling flat, that it's not working. And they were talking again. They're thinking about putting Hillary back out there as a candidate for the 2024 election.
Well, as a result, what they're saying, and this was the linchpin of the speech, is that Congress should get rid of the Senate should do away with the filibuster. Now, the filibuster is a parliamentary procedure that gives the minority the ability to stop a vote on a particular subject. This has been a part of our Senate procedure since 1806. So it's not like this is a new thing that we're getting rid of. But what it requires is for 60 member threshold in order to pass something like this into law. Well, they know that they don't have the votes. They don't have 60 votes in the Senate to pass this voting rights law. So what they want to do is get rid of that in order to have that 51-50 vote with Vice President Harris being the tiebreaker on this. In history, this is the tightest that our Senate has been divided, 50-50, with the vice president being the tiebreaker. And what they want to do is they want to change our society based on that slimmest of majorities. And what this would do is it would give the federal government charge over the states. And it's interesting too. Tom Cotton actually summed it up pretty well, where he was saying, that think about it, the narrowest majority in Senate history wants to break the Senate rules to control how voters in every state elect senators. Could there be a better argument to preserve the Senate rules, customs, and traditions? I mean, this is how the Senate actually gets voted in. So now they're in charge of how they get voted in. It's pretty much the fox guarding the hen house.
Yeah, I would say so. Hey, I got something kind of interesting for you. This is brand new, hot off the press. Baltimore's top prosecutor, Democrat Marilyn Mosby, who's been in the news a lot here this week, is indicted on charges of perjury, making false mortgage applications for Florida summer homes using COVID relief. Kamala, of course, praised her for always doing the right thing. And there's Kamala and Marilyn Mosby just chumming it up right there. Wow. How did she get elected?
That is crazy.
You know about her letting that dude off like 2 days ago? A guy that is charged with arson. His girlfriend and her family were in the house, this apartment building, it looked like, small one. And he goes over there with a can of gasoline and a match and sets the whole building on fire. He's charged with 11 counts of attempted murder. She lets him off after 6 months in prison. And even he said, I should still be in prison. She's all kinds of a mess. All kinds of a mess.
No kidding. I mean, and we've just seen just calamity after calamity where she's actually behind this. And it's funny that Kamala would praise this. We saw Kamala on Good Morning America this past week where she was being questioned, deer in the headlights. I mean, she's just really struggling as a vice president. I want to go back to that last story I was talking about, because I actually had a couple other things to talk about on that. One is that so this isn't going to happen. That vote that I was talking about on Martin Luther King Day, they're not going to do it. Chuck Schumer actually said it's because of a snowstorm that's coming in, but we know it's actually because Kyrsten Sinema is saying that she's not going to stand. She's not going to vote to get rid of the filibuster. Yeah. And so it's dead on arrival. That's just not going to happen. And what we've seen here is that several things on the Biden administration have come to failure this way. We saw last month where it was the Build Back Better fails. And they quickly turned to the Voting Rights Act, that fails. And at the exact same time, you're seeing the Quinnipiac poll that just came out this week on Biden, where he's now polling at 33%. Which is even heard 32% this morning. 32. Oh my gosh. It's just going down and down and down.
Notice this though. Note this is that this is while he's also got the whole mainstream media on his side. Trump was at these numbers with everybody against him.
Yeah. He had the whole world really to do whatever he could, and now everything that he's touched has really turned to crap. I mean, it's really, really bad. And the other thing too is you take a look at him, and boy, he just doesn't. You
talk about Biden here.
Yeah, I was listening to his speech, and he's slurring a bunch of his words. He sounds like he just came back from a dental appointment, and he's got Novocaine going on. I mean, boy, it's a picture of what's happening here in our country right now. Things are not looking good for this administration, and really for the country right now. This is a terrible place. And now we've got some real issues that are happening. The voting rights thing, I don't know why that comes to the top of the pile for Congress when we're taking a look at skyrocketing inflation that's happening right now.
2 out of 3 companies are said to be falsely overinflating because they have the opportunity and excuse to, and because they're making record profits.
You were talking about that last week in the meat industry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the meat industry is just horrifying, but industries overall, Crystal and Sagar have been talking about that 2 out of 3 companies have shown to be making record profits while they're overinflating their prices. And they had an interview. This morning, I was listening to it. Somebody representing the Fed, what do you call that? The bankers, all the bankers,
Federal Reserve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody representing them. And they just kept hammering him about, now, how can this be? How can this be? Is it this false overinflation? And he eventually said, well, it's because they can.
Well, sure they can.
I mean, so that finally hit it on the head. Dude, we got to take this country back. They're fleecing us in every which way. I say this every week. So I don't care if it's the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industry, which is just a complete farce. And they're partnered up with the FDA, who doesn't even police them anymore, which is their job. They're basically their one and only job is to validify testing and things like that. And then you got what's going on with all this inflation, the Federal Reserve. I got to tell you, I still believe that Bitcoin can straighten a lot of this out. I really do. But boy, oh boy, are you going to have all these bankers, the entire Federal Reserve, putting out so much misinformation about this, and also try to legislate against it. They'll do anything to stop Bitcoin, but it will take all the power out of their hands. And I think that, it's kind of the way things have been going for a while with the internet. Uber privatized, made things independent. Airbnb, which kind of screwed the taxi industry and different things like that, but it was better for the consumer. Airbnb did the same thing to the hotel industry, but made things better for the consumer and average everyday guy. Things like this, they're all getting privatized. Boy, I'd like to see the banking industry go this route for sure.
Yeah, it seems like the Federal Reserve. I mean, if you do any research on the Federal Reserve Bank, it's going to be eyebrow raising because of what's really happening there, and no time to go into that right now. But I do want
to say that people think that it's a government entity, and it's not. It's a private entity.
It absolutely is. And if you take a look at where your tax dollars are going when it comes to the Federal Reserve Bank, it's a scary thing. But to your point, the Bureau of Labor and Bureau of Labor statistics came out on the 12th. I guess that was 2 days ago, that the consumer price index, which reflects inflation from the perspective of end consumers, rose 7% in the 12 months through December, a level not seen since June 1982 when it hit 7.2%. So nearly 40 years, we're at an all-time high here. And, a big problem that we've seen is that the Fed's printed a whole bunch of money, and
they do every day.
What that did was, it put a whole bunch of money into the public, and now, just like you're saying, these companies can raise prices because they know that money is out there and they're getting that money.
It's a game.
here it is a game, and they know this game. The feds knew this game. Our government knows this game. They know that this happens every single time that we do stuff like this. A big problem is, I mean, it goes back decades and decades where our currency used to be backed by a gold standard. In other words, if you had a dollar in your hand, that dollar was representative of gold that the government had in Fort Knox. That went away, I believe, in the early 70s, and actually in the 60s. Once that went away, it made it possible for us to just print money willy-nilly, and it makes there's no stability to how our currency is valued.
Here now in it's California, only valued on our reputation as a nation.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. That's why things can go up and down so quickly. Yeah, and especially as you start seeing the presidential polls that are at 33%, that's a confidence here in our country.
It is.
Here in California, I just see a report here that just came out that over the last 10 years, our inflation rose 18%. 18%, with the highest inflation in the cost of housing. Over the last 10 years, the cost of housing has gone up 59.8%.
Oh my God. And what span of time?
But 10 years.
Wow.
And that's a lot of that is, and that's only until 2020. So from 2010 to 2020, since then, things have skyrocketed. So things have gotten much, much worse. I just got my gas bill. What we're seeing today, and this report goes on to talk about how typically we see these things in certain areas, the cost of food, we see it in other very typical areas, but now what we're seeing them in is a different thing. We're seeing them in energy prices, and also transportation prices as well. If you want to buy a car right now, a used car in particular, it's unbelievable what you're seeing. Right. But my gosh, I just got my gas bill, and it's like 3 times higher than what it was a year ago. Wow. It's unbelievable out there. So this inflation, and this is why the president's polls are so low. This isn't a partisan thing. This is hitting everybody right where it counts. People are struggling. They're trying to figure out, how am I going to make this happen? Yes, wages have gone up, but they're not keeping up with inflation right now. So really, when you adjust the wages to inflation, we're losing. We're losing on this one.
It's also manipulated. I just feel like we're always looking at a stacked deck every day.
Yeah.
Every policy that's passed, and it's bipartisan. Everything's a smoke screen.
You're right.
All this crap. I mean, I even was talking earlier in this podcast about how the Democrats are dooming themselves, trying to look back on Hillary like she's going to be a savior. What are they thinking, first of all, even bringing up Hillary's name? Everybody hates her.
I know what.
But she's part of the system, and they want part of the system back in. But again, it's bipartisan. And man, all of the inside, the stuff on Inside Trader, stuff that goes on with Congress, and especially Pelosi and her husband. But I was very saddened to hear that Dan Crenshaw's name is on that list of people in Congress that have been capitalizing on making very aggressive stock purchases at advantageous times, outperforming even the hedge fund managers of Wall Street. So
how hard would it be, though, if you're in Congress and you have access to that type of information, it's legal for them to do this, not to actually invest. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're right. And
I agree with you. The laws are bad. The laws are adjusting. Sagar put it great. Nobody in their families can do that, but you can invest in mutual funds. There you go. That's fair. Right.
Yeah,
so you're not out of the market, but you're just playing on the same playing field that everybody else is.
Well, and you look at what's the motivation for being, an elected official in Congress. And, unfortunately, these are the things that attract unscrupulous people.
It is unfortunate because, dude, to make 175 a year to do something like, if your heart is in it, that you feel like you're doing the country and the world some good, doing your part, I think that's a damn good life right there.
I do too.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we've talked about many times, the lobbyists that are out there, the financial gain that can be had, and what you're thinking about is your family, your kids, and how you could provide a nest egg for them in the future. These things, this type of temptation has got to be overwhelming.
Well, and it's insidious too. When you got just the right lobbyist that's saying, man, I can't wait to back your bill here because I'm all about it. It's good for the kids. It's good for the environment. And really what they're doing is already setting you up to get your vote on the next thing coming down. So, it's insidious. It's a slow burn.
Yeah. I see that as well.
All right. Do you want to lighten this thing up here?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Let's see. Where was I? I had a couple things. Oh, let's see. I got to remember to share the sound on this one. A woman saves these kids in Colorado. I got two things from Colorado. Is this it? Can you see this?
I can see it. Yep.
Colorado woman is being called a hero this morning after rescuing 3 children from an icy pond. Dusty Talavera was looking out her apartment window when she saw the kids fall in. So she ran outside and pulled 2 of the children from the water. But as she tried to grab the 6-year-old girl, the ice gave way and Talavera fell in too, thankfully. That girl's cousin came out, threw Talavera a rope, and helped pull them both to safety.
I just kind of put some shoes on and ran out. I just knew that nobody was really outside. So, I mean, it was me, I just knew it was me that had to do it.
What she did was amazing. We were back at the fire station talking about how brave she was, how great the officers did. And gosh, I hope if this happened to one of mine that somebody like her was close by.
That's
oh my gosh,
story.
Barry. I love how the guy was choked up right there. I'm kind of choked up here. Anytime I see people crying on TV, it makes me cry.
Oh, big guy like that, police captain, I'm sure. And he has kids.
Think about
kids. So it hits home.
The love that's in your heart to cause you to risk your life, this woman to risk her life like that, and then actually to go in the water herself. Hypothermia. People die very quickly that way, and this is wow. Yeah. Everybody was so fortunate that there were people paying attention right there.
It just looked to me, the circular man-made structure that it would be very easy to not be able to get out of that thing.
Oh, absolutely. It
wasn't like you're clawing up the shoreline. You know what I mean? Hey, I got another one from California. We'll wind this thing up and go into the after show. I said California. Another one from Colorado, I should say. A man in Colorado anonymously purchased a special guitar for a young boy who visited the store often just to play this guitar. And I got this picture of this guy. Over the last couple of years, Fallon would travel over an hour to visit JB Hart Music Company in Grand Junction from his home in Montrose. His request each time was to play the Pantera guitar, meaning the Dean Dimebag Darrell ML guitar. In quotes. We were shocked he knew some Dimebag riffs, spokesperson for JB Hart said. And Fallon, who has Williams syndrome, has an excellent knowledge and a love for music. His dream was to own this guitar. And 8 months ago, while he was in the store playing it, a customer took notice of Fallon. It moved the customer so much that he returned to the store later, purchased the guitar, and asked the music shop to give it to Fallon anonymously the next time he came in. Quote, however, we didn't see Fallon until today, the store wrote on a Facebook post in December of 21. We tried to find him, but to no avail. Today, his family came into the store and we learned that he moved to Texas and returned this week to visit. Still in quotes, it's a wonderful experience to gift Fallon his dream guitar as a gift from the kind stranger. His mom burst into tears and Fallon beamed with excitement. It was a special moment. There are still good people in this world. And I just love that story. And what I love most about it is anonymous donor. There is one of the 82 principles in the Tao Te Ching is that anytime that you try to do a good deed, but take credit for it, it undoes the good deed. You know, to do something anonymously, to do it without wanting recognition is a true gift. That's a true selfless gift. So I just thought that was terrific. Both of those in Colorado.
Absolutely. Wow.
I wanted to take notice of something. When you were talking a little while ago about the housing prices in California, and you kept saying, and here we got this and that. And I kind of wanted to stop you and say, just think, in a week or two, you're going to be saying, and there in California.
I could be an observer and not a participant.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. You know, these are things that as I look at them, I think, wow, this is why this is happening. It's bittersweet. You know, I mean, there's so many things I love about living here, and I feel like it's been ripped out of my hands. And so there's definitely anger around this whole thing. But also relief at the same time. So
I totally got it. Every emotion that you can have has to be wrapped in that because of your kids being there and Scott,
big
your
deal.
brother, and there's you set up roots. You set up real roots.
Yeah.
So
and not to mention, there's so many absolutely beautiful things about this place. It's a paradise. And I'm definitely gonna miss it, but I'm looking forward to the new things that are on the horizon.
You got a whole new brilliant chapter ahead of you, a lot of adventures. I can't wait to hear about it. And with
as they say, the best is yet to come.
Oh, that's a fact. And with that, do understand Merle's not going to be here next week, but we do have an action-packed episode already in the works. So please join us. And actually can't wait for Merle to be back in 2 weeks. It'll be very exciting. So catch that. And if you want to catch the after show, stay with us. If you're watching via YouTube, it'll come up. The link for it will come up, the little thumbnail right on your left there. See you next week, everybody. Go to over50startingover.com and sign up, and you'll catch all of our shows there. See you next.